Hey, I figured I would take a minute to give everybody a closer look at the new Falbo M Designs hardware that we're coming out with. It is now, I've made some of the headless and stuff available on some of these guitars. And so I've got a sort of a perfect time window where I still have some guitars in here in-house, and I have some hardware, that's been delivered. So the first thing I want to do is take a second to tell you how this came about. I have a good friend named Remco Meyer, and he's an astonishing designer. He designs amazing, excellent hardware, among other things. And he and I started working together probably over a year ago. And Remco, we would bounce back and forth some ideas. The philosophy, obviously, is two heads are better than one when you're doing mechanical engineering and design work like this. And so he had a lot of ideas already, and when he came to me and showed me some of them, and then we kind of tweaked some of them together and came up with a lot of things that I think that people will be pretty happy about and find pretty useful as well. And so the first thing that came on the scene, the first piece of hardware that we finished, was the individual string bridge that it looks like this. And this bridge takes one string at a time. You guys have seen guitars that do that. A lot of times those bridges will have a couple of Allen wrench, height adjusters here and here to raise a saddle up and down. And then they have another Allen wrench to sort of pinch it into the side wall. And they're pressing into the side wall in order to keep the saddle in place. And there's nothing wrong with that design. When we were thinking about what could we do that was better, we came up with the idea to have a solid base inside of here. So we still have this sort of bobsled, if it were, where there's a channel and the saddle moves backwards and forwards for intonation. But instead of a height adjustable saddle that's sitting on two Allen wrench, Allen pins, we have a solid contact bottom to the saddle base that sits inside this channel, and then the saddle itself rotates up and down by turning this, the saddle top itself, the screw. The saddle top is threaded, it goes up and down. So now I have more solid contact, and I've got a little better vibration transfer. We A-B'd this against the normal, typical bridges that are being used of this style. And I did them one at a time, where we took off the bridge and put this bridge on, and then just had that one string, and then the next string, and then the next string, and the next string. And it became really clear and really evident that the sound was an improvement. The sound was improved when we switched over to these. By the time you got halfway through the guitars, you had the top four strings sounding better than the bottom four strings, because there is more solid contact. So that's this this hardtail bridge. Now from here, from this idea, you get also the bass version. So when it comes to the bass, it's an overgrown version of the guitar one. It's fatter and bigger and heavier, but you still have the same solid contact, the same solid piece just resting against the bottom of this channel, and then you still have the height adjustment by threading that saddle up top. And so that's this design. Well, where can you go from there? So the next phase of something that I would say is similar or in a similar vein is a tremolo that we came up with that is I guess you would call it a single locking, or a non-locking tremolo. And as you can see, there's this channel right here, and that channel accepts the same type of saddle. So now we have the same on this tremolo. You've got the same type of movement, the same solid contact to the bottom of the base plate, but the saddle moves back and forth. And then, of course, the height adjustment is the exact same. You just keep, you raise and lower it with the threads. One thing that I'll point out now about our tremolos is that we are using a carbonized hardening methodology when it comes to these knife edge pivot points, which is very much so harder than a typical oil quenched hardening. And so what you get is you get a knife edge that's much stronger and will last much longer than even the best German, steel, case hardened steel base plates that we've seen in the past. Getting a question, will you be distributing these bridges if ever? Yes. So you stay tuned, or I'll put things in the comments. But you as a guitar builder, you'll be able to get these bridges directly from Remco in Australia, or from the U.S. or whatever. So yeah, we want luthiers to be able to use this. This is not something that I just developed to be used on fallible guitars. Builders can get these, and end users can get them to replace the bridges on their guitars. So these bridges, I'll say, these are a direct replacement. The screw holes are in the exact same spot. You just take the old bridge off and you pop the new one in. It fits in the same holes and behaves in the same manner as the single string bridges that you find, you commonly find on guitars out there to this day. But this is the non-locking tremolo, where you just feed the ball end here, goes over the saddle, but this does have our trem arm as well. So we're trying to innovate in all the areas where you can, trying to make improvements wherever the improvements can be made. So it seemed like our favorite tremolo arm holders are the ones that just pull in and out, but they have a nylon sleeve and they have an Allen wrench to tighten it, so that you get to decide how firm it's going to press in, and what kind of wiggle room you have, whether it's going to be loose or whether it's going to be tight. In addition, I'm not using anything on this tremolo at this moment, but in addition, there is a threaded hole here on the bottom, which allows you to put like a thumb wheel or screw in there, or an Allen bolt or whatever, if you wanted to set a minimum height, right, a minimum depth of the arm. So I have the arm plunging in all the way, and that's where I like it on this guitar. So we're happy with this. If somebody wanted it to sit higher, they could go in here and put something up in the bottom, and it would end up, it would go up, right, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so it's a real solid bar. Bar doesn't go anywhere. The fit is good, even without having to have the Allen wrench come in and tighten it, and push in against the side and tighten up the nylon bushing. So that's the single lock, or excuse me, non-locking. And then you've got our locking tremolo, which is somewhat rooted in the headless hardware that I'll get to in just a second. So the locking tremolo, if you guys are, you know that a Floyd Rose locks like right behind the saddle. It locks and then the string just comes out and goes right out of there. These bridges, we're locking, if this is the saddle, we're locking back here in order to have this tuning mechanism function. And so you are able to tune, and by tuning, you're moving this, forward and backwards, right? So by de-threading this, you're pushing, this guy's coming forward, all the way, and you push it all the way forward when you're going to string the guitar. You push it all the way forward, string it up, lock it up, and then you start tuning so that your tuning is sharp, right? Your tuning comes sharp. Asking, does these have prices? They do. Some of the prices are posted on the web. If somebody needs higher quantities for guitar making, contact us, because then we will have like a luthier, quantity pricing and things like that for somebody, for a guitar factory or whatever. These bridges are made in a facility where we are very, very able to make a lot of these, if need be. The facility is extremely capable. It's the kind of place that does like F1 parts and a lot of medical stuff. So it's very, very high precision, but at the same time they have a lot of capacity. And this is just a cool thing that they want to do. They want to do, guitar hardware as well. And so we get the benefit of that by being able to, go in and give them these cool designs and have them, have them made, And so we've been just having a blast. And so let's talk about this trem, right? So this tremolo, it's basically, it's an omni trem, right? It's anything at this point. This one happens to be an 8-string. If you guys, well, you can't really see when the saddles are on here, but I'll show you an empty base plate just to make the point that I'm going to make here in a second. on an empty base plate, this happens to be a 6-string, and you can see there's a bunch of holes that you get to choose from in order to mount the saddle to the top, okay? And so that's what makes this bridge workable for a straight scale or for a multi-scale. Now there's certain degrees. Of course, you can't have a humongous fan and have, you know, the saddles coming off the back of the thing, right? But the higher up you get in the distance of the fan, the greater you get, the more difficult it would be to even have a tremolo work anyway. But you can get up to, you know, a couple inches on this thing. I mean, if you have, depending on where your straight fret is, it just depends, you know, everyone has to draw their own geometry. They have to decide how many, you know, how long the spread is going to be, and then which fret is going to be the center fret. But you can talk with us too, and we'll share with you, like, you know, whether it's a DXF file, things like that you need to build your guitars around this. You know, like I said, we're happy to share those kinds of things with you, but you'll be able to move these saddles way, way back and locate them in different holes. Like on this 8-string, there are, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different holes that you can choose for a typical, a typical really straight bridge or a real mild fan. You know, I'm back, by the time I get to this lowest string, I'm back to the, you know, to the 4th hole, but I'm all the way forward, and I can still go back from there, and I've got 5 and 6. Same arm holder that I mentioned, right? So same, you know, cool, like just press fit, nylon bushing, Allen wrench to decide how tight it is. But it uses the same idea where we have these rotating saddles, right? You just, you know, you spin the saddle to make it go higher and lower. And I should mention that all of these bridges that have that rotating saddle, of course they do have an Allen set screw inside of there so that you can tighten it and lock it into place. So it's not vibrating weird, but it's also not moving either. If you change strings, it doesn't, you know, move from side to side inside of those threads. It's just, it's solid. And so you lock that in, you lock in the saddle, you lock the strings, you know. But what's cool about this bridge is, well, I'll show you the concept on this headless that I have that I'm shipping out to its owner basically right after this video. It goes back into the bag and out the door. But on this, what I'm doing on this headless is I have a headpiece that accepts the ball ends. It can accept a bare end as well, and you tighten this down and lock it from there. But I'm locking the ball ends into this one, to this side up here at the head, and then I'm locking the bare end over here at the bridge. So I just feed the string through, lock it with these Allens right here, these guys. So you just lock that down, and that holds the string into place, and then you start tuning on the headless. Same thing is true on the tremolo, except for if you're using the tremolo, if you're not using it on a headless, well then you're going to feed the ball end through on this side. So you just run the ball end through, put it up into your tuners, and start tuning. But then when you lock at the lock nut, if you do use this as a double lock, right? So if you also lock at the nut, then you'll be using these tuners as your fine tuners, you know, because it is a very, very fine pitch thread. So it can be used as fine or coarse tuning, basically, just by how quickly you spin the button. But so yes, you've got a tremolo that will work with headed guitars or headless guitars. This is kind of a complex, you know, piece that I have here, where you're building the guitar around that piece up top. But we do have those little triangles as well. Those are available as well. So the typical little triangle pieces that you see up beyond the head, you know, the nut on other headless instruments, we have that. So you'll be able to get that as well if you don't plan to build a guitar around this entire, you know, headless guitar around this entire concept. But that's just me. This was something that I designed. It somewhat leverages the way that my string ball ends attach in my other patented stuff, like the acoustic guitar bridge and things. So I have a, you know, I just like that. I wanted that to be part of my headstock, you know, on the headless, right? My little headpiece. So the tremolo, though, like I said, straight scale or multi-scale, headless or headed. It's up to you if you want to use a lock nut, you know, on it or not. And it is 6-string, 7-string, and 8-string, and of course available in chrome, black, gold, and custom order. You know, it depends on when we get certain things through plating, when we get them in stock, but black nickel is also one of the colors. And so if you guys like the Cosmo Black that's used on Ibanez, or some companies call it smoky chrome, or they call it black nickel hardware, we do have that as well. And so we are, you know, we're in basically in full production now on this hardware. So it's available. It's available on my Ergo headless guitar, for example. I'm making guitars right now with this hardware, but it's also available to guitar makers, and it's available to guitar owners if you want to, you know, if you want to do that. Furthermore, as if the bass individual string bridge wasn't enough in the headless, there's headless bass as well. And I have a project. I can't tell you when it's going to be done, but I do have a headless bass project. As you can see, this is kind of a rarity. These units happen to be plated white. So you might be looking at something like a Stormtrooper, you know, color scheme on a bass at some point in the future. But it behaves the same way. It can accept a ball end, or it can lock in here, and it just turns and goes in. One of the things that I really love about these designs, and it's easier for me to show it to you on the bass. You can see it on the guitar too, but on a small screen, it's easier to show on the bass. Instead of a nylon bushing between the tuner and the body, the shell, we actually have ball bearings. So these are custom-made washers and ball bearing fittings, so that, and I'll try to get it. We'll see we'll see if I can get it to where you can make it out. Yeah, there it is. That's pretty good on the bass. So you guys see that there's ball bearings all around there. So when this closes up and it's under string tension, one of the big complaints was, it's so hard to turn, it's hard to turn, it's hard to turn. So these ball bearings, of course I can't show you that on camera, but these are like the smoothest turning headless tuning system that I've ever personally played myself and tried and used myself, because it's just rolling against a ball bearing instead of having like a piece of nylon in there. And so the same thing is true, like I said, on the guitar ones, right? If I back that out, you can kind of tell, maybe, I don't know, it's a little smaller, but there's these little cute little ball bearings in there, and so they really work well. You know, that alone is an improvement in headless bridge design, because, like I said, you're sitting there mid gig and they're kind of like, you know, and you're kind of tearing up your skin when you're trying to adjust it. Now, I said before that we're using a special carbon hardening process on the steel for our base plates, which keeps the knife edges very durable, very sharp for a very long time. We are also using that same technique on the pivot studs for the tremolo. And so check this out. So not only do you have a great pivot point, right? Real sharp and clean knife edge that's going to stay sharp and nice for a long time, but it's also, some of my Ibanez friends want to know, it's also a locking stud. So there is a little, lock right down the center. I'm going to take it apart and show you guys, down here at the bottom. So once you have the height set, then you come in here down the top with a little Allen wrench and you lock it in place. So that's just another feature that I've liked it when I've had it in the past. Sometimes I don't use it, sometimes I leave it unlocked, but it's nice to know that it's there, when you, if you want it, if you want to put it in and lock it in place. It does act as a thread lock too. Now our threads are pretty precision. I don't really have much movement if I pull this thing, back and forth or try to wiggle it, but it is a thread lock too. Like I said, you tighten it down and it pushes one thread against the other. So you're locking the thread. Other thing to point out on the tremolo, regardless of whether it's a 6, 7, or an 8 string, it has one style of block. Now this one happens to be a fatty, but they have a regular sized, a regular sized block. It's not to say that you can't get other blocks. What is one of my favorite things about this is that we did have it, again, whether 6, 7, or 8, it's using the same 3 screw hole pattern as an original Floyd Rose sustain block. So if you want to change the sustain block for anything, titanium, stone, brass, big brass, little to thin brass, different heights, 32 millimeters, 36, you can change it. You can buy any aftermarket, I say any, maybe I should say almost any, but you can buy almost any, aftermarket sustain block from anywhere and use it. So if you've developed an affinity for titanium, blocks, maybe the day will come then we'll cut titanium blocks and have them for these things. But absent that, you'll still be able to do so. You'll be able to just pop the saddles off, change the base, change the sustain block in the exact same way that you guys are used to doing so on your other tremolos, like your Floyd Roses. And so that's about it. Now, I'm doing this my time. It's a little late at night, so I'm not expecting the engagement to be that strong live. If you're watching this and you have questions, just type them in. I'll come back and follow up, and I'll look at it and see, and see if there's anything I can shed light on, or maybe it'll lead to another version of this where we go really in depth and geek out on things like why some parts of this are milled brass and milled out of a solid piece of brass, and why we use stainless for something else. What kind of screws we're using for this, I don't know. I imagine people, some people will geek out, but for now, I just wanted to give you an overview, but take a look deeper at how these things worked. So again, we've got the non-locking tremolo. Looks like that. We've got the individual string bridges for 6 strings, 7 strings, 8 strings, just guitar sized, right? We have individual string bridges for bass, so bigger, meatier. We have the tremolo for 6 string, 7 string, and 8 string, and it's the same tremolo that you would use. You would use this tremolo for an 8 string straight scale or an 8 string multi-scale. 7 string straight, 7 string multi, whatever. You use the same tremolo whether it's a headless guitar or whether it's a headed guitar. On the 6 string, assuming these aren't shooting way off the back, on the 6 string, just so you guys know, it does actually fit an original Floyd Rose cavity route. So if you had a guitar that was routed for an original Floyd Rose and you felt like you wanted to drop this in, you should be able to do so with no routing as well. So it fits a Floyd cavity. It fits a Floyd sustain block as well if you want to buy replacement sustain blocks, from Floyd or any of the other companies that make those. So the tremolo, the studs we showed you, the individual headless bass, and like I said, this hardware is in use now. So I'm making guitars with it. So like the Falbo Ergo 8-string that you see here has these individual bridges on it. And the headless guitar, the headless Ergo, this is a custom piece that somebody ordered, where they wanted this, specific kind of shape in here and, all this stuff. They ordered a headless, and so now you've got this guitar with the headless. Steve is telling me to play the 8. I'm not plugged in. I kind of on purpose didn't put in any amplifier. I didn't plug myself in just so that I wouldn't be tempted to play, but you can probably hear the little, the slapping of the string against the frets in the room, right? Anyway, I will do other videos maybe in the future where I play some 8-string and some of these guitars that we're making. I won't do a video where I play this because, as I said before, this is moments away from going back into the case and right into the box to be shipped out to its owner. It happens to have a roasted ash body, case you guys didn't see it. I did another live with Dino where we were just kind of goofing off a couple nights ago, and we showed this off and we showed some of the other ones. But yeah, I'll take a minute to talk about this thing before it goes out of my hands forever. It's a roasted ash body, I should say, rather. Like the whole body is one piece of roasted ash. So no split. And then the top is painted. So it's still, like I said, it's one piece, but I came in with, I stopped short with the paint so that you have kind of a binding edge. And it's like a rose gold color. I don't know if you can tell because the camera on the phone does a lot of weird things, but it will go, depending on how you're looking at it, it'll go from a medium pink to sort of a champagne, goldish pink. And it just depends on how the light hits it and what kind of other things are reflecting off of it. It's a roasted maple and wenge neck sandwich. So I usually do like a 2-piece neck split down the center. This guy wanted a 3-piece neck, which is beautiful. I put a little bit of flames on the board, it's hard to tell, but it's not a straight grained roasted maple fingerboard. There's a little flames in it, but not incredibly flamed like some of the other stuff that I have. And this guy also wanted a neck that had a bit of a flat section down the back. And so if any of you guys have played a Strandberg, you know that it's dead flat across the back, and then there are very sharp angles as it goes down. And so you're supposed to put your thumb down in the middle, or if you put your thumb on the other section, again, now you're supposed to just put your thumb this way. So it's not a continuous thing, you're supposed to kind of have your thumb in a certain spot as you go up or down. This guy plays those and he likes those, and so he wanted me to do sort of something similar to that, but I still have a gentle slope into the treble and into the bass side. It's not so firm, but you can still play, that way. You can still play with your thumb on the back. So that's that one. The Ergo 8, you guys have seen in pictures, I think, before, or in other videos. So this is that. This is the Alpha Ergo. This is my 8-string multi-scale. It's available in 6, 7, and 8, multi-scale or straight, with our tremolo or with a hardtail, headless or headed. So I mean, you all of the above. If you want one, like I said, multi-scale, headless, great. Straight scale with a tremolo, great. Multi-scale with a tremolo, no problem. So we do all those and all that stuff here. But that's about it. If you have questions, like I said, just type them in. If you're listening to this or watching this, after the fact, then just type them. I'll try to come back and watch it. Watch the comments section if you have any specific questions. There is a website. So there's like Apollo Music Parts has this stuff posted up on that site, available for purchase. It depends on what's in, what is in stock at this second. So this is kind of like the it's not a preview because we are making these things and we are starting to just have them in stock. But just at the time that I'm saying this to you on camera, there may be certain things that he doesn't have in stock yet, that are on the way or they're coming back from plating or something like that. But that's the plan, is to have a full complement of this stuff available all the time in all different kinds of colors. And with that in mind, that's it. I'm done. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope to see competent luthiers pick up on this and use it on their builds. That would really make me happy, because we put a lot of thought, a lot of hard work into this stuff, and I think we have some stuff that is just different and advanced enough to really warrant its existence. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you out there.